question, is it hate or a strategy? Across 7 high-profile relationships and rivalries, the words she chose were routinely parsed as dismissive. But what if those moments form one consistent playbook to manage the Hollywood princess label? We'll examine how critics and media interpreted her phrasing, why audiences heard entitlement, and where she insisted it was authenticity. Stay to spot the repeated beats, subtle superiority, boundary drawing, and brand protection, threading all 7 stories together. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1. Megan Fox. Here's where the compliments get chilly. When Gwyneth talks about younger actresses like Megan Fox, the tone can sound gracious while quietly drawing a line. She leans on words like authenticity, training, taste, terms that signal a lane for serious craft. Fox, who became synonymous with a bombshell era, gets acknowledged, but the framing hints that some careers are branded more than built. According to critics, Gwyneth's Hollywood princess image shapes how any praise lands. Because she's seen as having an unfair advantage from elite schooling and insider ties, even a supportive nod can read paternal, not peer level. In a BBC Hard Talk moment, she said, "All I can do is be my authentic self," while recognizing people may see her as spoiled or think she didn't work for what I have. That self-positioning doubles as a hierarchy. Authenticity on top, image below. Fans were quick to connect that vibe to Fox's media phase, where coverage highlighted looks over process. And when Gwyneth calls media lumping misogynistic in Time, she still separates her lane from others, protecting a brand of discipline and taste. The net effect? Fox becomes the other in a craft versus image split, and that tone sharpens when history and rivalry enter the chat. Number 2. Winona Ryder. It starts with the lore everyone whispers about, a script on a coffee table, a friendship in the 90s, and a role that drifted from Winona Ryder's reach into Gwyneth's arms. The folklore says it was Shakespeare in love, and the timing lined up with Ryder's cool girl indie reign hitting turbulence, while another star got minted. The question is whether later comments added sting to an already messy story. The narrative kept growing because awards season turned that movie into an industry fable. Paltrow's ascent looked like a coronation, and according to critics, that moment sealed the princess aura. When she addressed the rumors over the years, she didn't launch into details. She pared it back, kept it tidy, and moved on. That clipped posture sounded serene to fans of hers, and strategic to everyone who still believed there was a borrowed spotlight involved. People went back through late 90s interviews to parse wording about friends, who had what script, and who was in the room. The selective memory read less like amnesia and more like status management. Even the absence of a quote can perform power. Denial or a careful non-comment lands as dismissal when it's tied to Oscars myth-making. And that cool distance shows up again with a Marvel-adjacent peer next. Number 3. Scarlett Johansson. When 2 leads share a franchise, how do offhand comments set invisible fences? With Scarlett Johansson, the boundaries felt polite but firm, especially during the Iron Man 2 and Avengers press cycles. Gwyneth often talked about set culture and staying in her lane, stressing routine, professionalism, and a preference for grounded character work. That language sounds neutral, but fans heard it as a subtle seniority claim. Meanwhile, Scarlett's coverage leaned into action credibility, blockbuster appeal, and the Black Widow iconography. When one person frames process as the point, and the other gets packaged as the franchise draw, you get a quiet divide. Craft versus commercial muscle. Media critics have noted how women in big franchises get slotted as rivals even when nobody says the word. That lens magnifies every contrast. Who calls a role not my thing, who claims a lane, who looks like the mentor, and who looks like the brand. Gwyneth has said she dislikes reductive comparisons among women entrepreneurs. Yet that same stance can read like higher ground when she defines taste and tone. Added up, and the boundary talk plays like rank ordering, elder curator versus marquee powerhouse. And that neat separation gets even more pronounced when the comparison spans decades, not just phases. Number 4. Angelina Jolie. Two archetypes, one silent standoff. Gwyneth leans into curated wellness and tasteful restraint. Angelina projects global grit and on-the-ground action. Apparently, that contrast fuels a quiet debate about who gets to define serious womanhood on screen and off. Gwyneth insists she doesn't chase the noise. She told Red Magazine she doesn't read anything and, if it's important, it filters down to me. That cool detachment, paired with public mantras about authenticity and not competing, sounds zen on the surface. But according to fans, when media anoints Angelina as the humanitarian benchmark, Gwyneth's refusal to engage plays like an elevated shrug, above the contest, yet still naming it. Critics point out how press lumps high-profile women together. Gwyneth has pushed back on that kind of misogynistic grouping in broader conversations, yet a rejection can double as a ranking. By declining the frame, she steps out of the pit, while implying the pit exists beneath her. It's social distance disguised as grace. So, the mini payoff is simple. She preserves apex status not by sparring, but by opting out with style. No feud headlines, no direct shots, just a posture that keeps her crown polished. And that posture meets a younger insider when one viral panel clip refuses to fade. Number 5. Dakota Johnson. It starts on that couch, the viral panel where Dakota Johnson quietly corrects the room. Viewers heard a soft clapback. Not because of the words, but because of the read. The moment landed like a pin in a balloon. Small, precise, and suddenly everyone leaned in. The dynamics were the whole show. Johnson sat with that dry, unhurried delivery, the kind where her face barely moves, but the joke lands anyway. Across from her, Gwyneth kept that breezy charm, the kind people call effortless. A small correction turned into a vibe check, and fans were instantly assigning roles. The cool one, the condescending one. Watch the micro signals. Johnson's eyes cut over, hold for a beat. Then she lets the line drop. The laugh isn't big, it's surgical. Gwyneth's smile sits a second too long, and the glance away reads like a reset. On TikTok and YouTube, quick edits zoom the stare, slow the pause, and stamp a hierarchy you can't unsee. That's why the clip stuck. It felt like the princess gloss slipped for a second. And audiences love a seam. A tiny, funny correction became a character test. And from one viral couch, we moved to a history where the stakes were personal. Number 6. Brad Pitt. Here's the paradox fans clocked right away. Gwyneth praises Brad Pitt's talent and charm, then slides him into a tidy arm's-length box. The tone is warm, but the framing keeps her on the balcony, surveying the past with poise. Apparently, that's the sweet spot. Elevate him, yet keep the authority. She talks about being young, about mistakes, about needing to grow up, and the subtext is a syllabus. Their rocky breakup becomes coursework, and she's the one presenting the lesson learned. According to media takes, this reads like contrition that still centers her discernment. She approves of who he is, while proving who she became. Over the years, she reflects on timing, family expectations, and how those pressures shaped the split. The wording credits him as formative, but it frames her as the evolved figure who now understands boundaries and values. Fans were quick to call it curated honesty, that glossy version of vulnerability that plays like brand hygiene, own a flaw, control the narrative, keep the crown. So the net effect flatters Pitt while confirming her high ground. Gracious, reflective, and far above the mess. If that was careful praise wrapped in distance, the next X doesn't get velvet gloves. He gets a clinical debrief. Number 7. Ben Affleck. Fans remember the blunt summary. He wasn't right for her, but the delivery stuck harder than the verdict. The tone felt less like nostalgia, more like a performance review, and that's where the eyebrow raise began. She leaned on words that suggested checklists: intellect, ambition, lifestyle alignment, apparently weighing him against a rubric. The phrasing sounded managerial, almost like she was auditing a merger instead of an old romance. That's where the elitist label kicked in, because it read as class-coded. like there was a threshold of polish he didn't meet. Viewers heard a calibrated distance that framed her as the evaluator and him as the case study. Without trading barbs, Affleck has acknowledged youthful chaos from that era, and media juiced the contrast. His comments looked human and messy. Her comments sounded curated and measured. The back and forth became a neat storyline. He says they were young and wild. She says the fit was off. That dynamic cemented her as the decider, the one marking pass-fail on compatibility. The payoff is simple. Clinical language keeps her on the apex, cool, composed, in charge of the narrative and the lesson. And that posture connects every item on this list to one larger playbook about brand, status, and controlled proximity.